Hi, everybody. So I mentioned in my previous video that I was going to come back on here and talk a little bit about something that's been, playing on me a little bit as I'm going through this process. So, my whole purpose, and I've said it many times, my whole purpose to, recording this video series and sharing, this personal, very personal journey with you. The whole purpose of me doing that, has been twofold. Number one, I wanted to give people the opportunity to, s- get an inside view and see what this process actually looks like for somebody who's suffering, from some kind of a mental illness. And the second, purpose to this is that I wanted to be able to share information, hopefully helpful information that, will help people gain a better understanding about, what it's like to suffer from mental illness and, you know, share information that will educate people on, how to help, what it looks like, how to, recognize it and identify it, and what, how important it is to pay attention to your own body and your own experience in life, because I think we've all become so programmed, on how to handle things and how to, how to navigate our way through life. And so, uh, the purpose of this particular video is to share with you some information about how to help. And so I think that that's something that a lot of people experience a lot of frustration about. And I think there's a lot of ignorance about it because, especially if you've never gone through anything like this in your life. And I mean, personally, I've come to the point where, I think everybody suffers from, from some kind of, experience like this throughout their lives at some point or other. We all face challenges. We all have life experiences that are going to knock us down and, have curveballs thrown at us and everything else. And I think it's really important that, we keep this conversation going and, learn as much as we can about how to help. So for me, one of I guess the place that I would like to start is the importance of just showing up. And so, as I've been going through this process, and I've said this before in previous videos, but it's difficult to explain how important it is to have support when you're going through something like this. The people who have reached out to me, the people who continue to reach out to me, the people who let me know that they're following along in this series, you know, it's difficult to explain how critical that piece is in the recovery process. You know, having one person reach out and say, just even one person reach out and say, I'm really sorry that you're going through this. Let me know if there's anything that I can do. And, it may seem like a small thing and it may seem insignificant, but it is so far from insignificant. I mean, if it wasn't for the people who have been, supporting me throughout this process, I can't imagine. It's lonely enough. You feel alienated enough. You feel, uh, I guess, guilty enough. And, you there's a lot of shame attached to it. And, about all the shoulds. We should be able to, manage this. We should be able to, push, plow through, and suck it up and all these things. And I think it so keeps people stuck. And this information is not just important for the people who have already suffered from mental illness, or who are going through it now. It's important for you because you don't know when in your life you could be faced with something like this. You really don't. And no matter how strong you think you are, no matter how intelligent or resilient you think you are, yes, we can all work on developing, resiliency skills and all the rest of it, but you just don't know when this could happen to you or to a family member. So I really hope that you listen to what I have to say, and that, it starts a conversation, amongst you and your family members and your friends as well, because it's such a critical piece, to the recovery process. So again, the first thing that I want to say is, when you come across somebody who is struggling from anything like, any kind of mental illness, any kind of, psychosomatic symptoms. And what I mean, I don't know if everybody understands what I mean when I say psychosomatic, but basically it's the physical symptoms that seem to manifest themselves in your body because of the stress that you're under. And so, whether that's work related stress, whether it's, just life stress, no matter what that looks like, a lot of physical symptoms can end up manifesting in your body. And those symptoms are very real. Psychosomatic symptoms are not something that's created in the mind. They are very real symptoms. I mean, I'm not creating in my mind a rash that's all over my body, right? Like, these are things that, we really have to come to grips with the reality of what people are suffering from. And, I've seen it a lot myself over the years. I've known people who have suffered from things like fibromyalgia and, different silent, or I can't remember the term they use, but it's basically illnesses that you can't see. And it's so debilitating when you suffer from, those kinds of things, and people, disregard you, or they place blame or shame on you, and they don't necessarily want to listen or believe that, you're suffering from these things. And I mean, let's face it, I don't think there's anybody on the planet who wants to be suffering from mental illness. I don't think there's anybody on the planet who wants to be experiencing psychosomatic symptoms. So we really have to change our perspective on that. So, when you see somebody suffering, or you learn that somebody is suffering from some kind of mental illness, the first thing that you need to do is just be there. Show up, reach out, let people know that you're available, and just support them. And it doesn't matter if they avail of it or not. It's, the important piece is showing up. It's coming to the table to say, look, I'm here, and make yourself visible. Because I think something that a lot of people don't understand about mental illness is, and a lot of people will reach out and say, oh, well, come by, pop by anytime. I'm always here for you. That's good. It's good to show up and let people know that you're there. But you have to be really careful about having any expectation that they're actually going to come see you. Because typically, one of the really debilitating parts of mental illness is it's the need to withdraw. And it's such a conundrum, because when you're going through mental illness, the connection is so important, but you have this need to withdraw. So, I mean, if you think about a turtle kind of, going into its shell, anytime a turtle feels threatened, they retreat. They're going to retreat inside of their shell. And so that's what mental illness looks like. When you are going through any kind of a mental illness, you're one of your first responses, physically, mentally, and emotionally, is to shut down. It's to withdraw. It's to, seek safety and security and comfort. And in most cases, for most people, that's going to mean that they're going to be seeking that, security and comfort, in their own homes. And so it's a difficult piece, but it's so important to understand this one critical aspect of the fact that you know, you have to be careful about what your expectations are when it comes to people seeking help. If somebody is suffering from mental illness and they find it in themselves somewhere, if they find the strength to reach out and ask for help, that in and of itself is a bit of a miracle. And so my you know what I would encourage you to do in terms of that piece is, yes, call, text, message, reach out in whatever way you can, but let people know that you're there to support them. And if you can, and I know that people are busy, everybody has their own lives. We've been going through COVID, which makes it much more difficult to go and actually visit somebody. But pre-COVID or post-COVID, if you can, if the restrictions are lifted enough, um, and you do have the ability, drop by, or reach out and ask if it's okay for you to drop by, because chances are the person who is struggling with the mental illness, um, quite often it can be difficult to get out of bed, let alone come over and visit somebody, when they're struggling. So just keep that in mind, that you have to manage your expectations around, what that's going to look like when people are struggling. The second piece that I want to talk about is the importance of just listening. And so we have a tendency, just as human beings, that when somebody raises an issue to us, if they are, if they bring a problem forward or they say that they're struggling, and I'm very guilty of this myself, we have such a tendency to want to fix it. We want to offer advice. We want to form an opinion, offer advice, and we want to just try to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. And in a lot of ways, for somebody who's struggling with any kind of mental illness, that can actually be really, really frustrating. So I think one of the biggest things that people typically need when they're going through something like this, and I mean, again, I have to speak from my own experience, but I think one of the most important things is to just have people show up and be willing to listen. Um, quite often when we've been going through a lot of things and we've been, quite possibly, struggling to communicate our needs for such a long period of time, having somebody show up to just be willing, somebody who's willing to just show up and listen, it is such a gift. And it's almost inexplainable how important it is, how key it is, because when you have people who are just willing to show up and listen, what that does is it creates a safe space. And so, when you can show up and just listen to somebody and allow them to express what they need to express, allow them to talk about what they're going through, allow them to talk about their physical symptoms and what that experience is like for them, without forming an opinion or judgment about it, without making assumptions about, whether they're creating it, whether they're creating it for themselves, or whether, they're too focused on negative things. I mean, that's just so not helpful. And so, if you can show up and listen and be genuinely interested in what that person has to say or what they're trying to express, that's what's really, I feel like that's what's most situations, because we don't know what somebody else's experience is. We don't know what kind of anguish people are suffering from. We don't know what kinds of experiences that they've had, or, how that's impacted them in their lives. And if we don't get to express these things, then that's what creates emotional baggage. So, both for yourself and for other people, it's really important that we give ourselves the gift of just a supportive shoulder. And what that means is that you you try to develop, and it is a skill, right? Like it's a, it's a different level of communication when you can do that. And I've learned a lot about that listening skill through my, my coaching career and all the training and stuff that I've received. But it's like they call it like a third level of listening. And basically it's just creating that safe space for somebody to be able to express themselves. And that kind of leads me into my next point, because it doesn't help when you form opinions or judgments about things. What people need is is a really good ear and a sounding board. They don't necessarily need your solutions. And I know that that can be really difficult because, like I said, as human beings, we always want to be able to, offer people advice. We want to be able to, fix things or offer solutions so that we can just fix it and get on with it. And sometimes, I think it's really important to recognize that, and this is something I've really been recognizing for myself as well, is that as we go through these kinds of challenges, I do believe that these challenges are meant to, they're a gift. It's you have to be able to see it as a gift in order to be able to, process through it successfully. And I think that, if we can look at these kinds of experiences from that perspective and help and understand that our whole goal should be towards helping people navigate through the process rather than just getting in and fixing it, like offering a solution and just, getting on with the game. Because that's not what it's about. I think that the most value is going to come from our ability to be able to navigate through this process successfully, and take out of it what we need to take out, make the changes that that the universe is trying to tell us to make. It's life, right? This is what the process of life looks like. And being able to look at it from that perspective has been really positive for me, because instead of seeing it as something that's happening to me, and Tony Robbins talks about this all the time, right? So like, rather than seeing life as happening to you, if you can see it from the perspective of life is happening for you, then it totally opens up, a whole new realm of possibilities and options and opportunities. And so that's the way that I'm choosing to see this whole experience, because it has been excruciatingly difficult. It has been extremely challenging. It's one of those situations that you just never know what's going to happen next. But because I'm choosing to see it as an opportunity and a gift, I've been able to gain a lot of perspective, a really helpful perspective about what it could mean, why it could be happening. And, it's opening my eyes in terms of what changes that I need to make in order to be able to improve the quality of my life and, hopefully other people's lives as well. So, leading to my next point that I want to make is, and this is a really big one, you have to be careful not to take anything personally. And I mean, again, I know it's difficult. It's not the way that we're programmed, but it's important to understand that that person's journey and recovery is about them. It's not about you in any way, shape, or form. So you have to learn to be okay with them not being okay. And it's such a big piece, because one of the reasons why I think there's so much stigma around mental illness is because we are afraid of it. We try to distance ourselves as much as possible from, this kind of an experience, because, quite honestly, I think it reminds us of what we're going through ourselves. And so when the social conditioning is push that down, suppress it, push it away, resist it, don't partake in that. You don't want to, I can't go into that because I'll get buried. I can't allow myself to experience that pain because, I'm afraid I'm just going to drown in it and there'll be no coming back. Like, that's our social conditioning. And so when we, approach this kind of a situation when there's somebody else involved, that's one of the reasons why we have such a tendency to want to fix it for them, because we don't it makes us uncomfortable. And so when we're trying to be there for somebody else, when we're trying to show up and let that support that person, um, we have to learn to be okay with them not being okay for the moment. And it's a hard lesson, but I think it's an extremely important one, because what we allow ourselves to be and do for others, it will also impact us, right? And so the more we can develop that understanding about learning how to show compassion and empathy and caring in a support in a different way, I think that it's going to be helpful for us, because you internalize those things as well, right? So learn to be okay with them not being okay. Their illness should not be an inconvenience to you. You have to learn to empathize. So, sometimes I've seen this over and over again in mental health and addictions, but, families kind of tend to get, and it depends on the severity of the mental illness, obviously. Uh, and, for families, it can be excruciatingly difficult. I've struggled with it my whole life. I come by it naturally. I do believe that I inherited, some genes and some learned behaviors and stuff from my own family, from my own parents. And so, you know, it's it's something that I think we're all exposed to at some point or another, right? So depending on the severity, though, of the mental illness, I find that families and loved ones, and even friends can kind of tend to get wore out. It can be a very frustrating experience, because there's nothing, I don't think there's anything worse other than self-betrayal, because, that's self-betrayal is one of the most painful experiences of all. But I don't think there's next to that, I don't think there's anything worse than seeing somebody suffering and feeling like there's nothing you can do. But this is why it's so important to understand there is something you can do. You can just be there. And letting people know that you're there consistently. Don't reach out once and say, oh, well, bye for struggling. I'm here for you. And then turn around, after something happens and say, oh, well, I said I was there, but they didn't reach out. Well, no, because they were struggling. They were going through a lot. So it's really important to understand that person's journey is about them. It's not supposed to be about you. And the best way that you can support those people, the way that you can be the best friend, the best family member, the most loving and compassionate person that you can be, is to just accept the fact that their journey is not about you, and their recovery is not, it can't be about you. And so, just being there is that critical piece, right? And so we have to be able to empathize with the person enough to be able to show compassion. And sometimes, look, it just comes down to being able to say, I'm so sorry that you're struggling with that right now. I am here for you. If you need an ear, please let me know and I'll show up at your door. Like, those are the things that have made a really, really big difference for me as I've been navigating my way through this. So some of the things that you can ask people, if you do get to, sit down and have a conversation with somebody who's really struggling, you could ask people what they really wish that people would understand about what their experience has been, or what it is that they're going through. Ask them what they need, what they really feel like they need to express. And so quite often, the burdens that we carry in our lives, the longer we carry them, they just get heavier and heavier. And so sometimes it's just about being able to express, your feelings about something. It's being able to express your point of view, or why you think, that something happened to you, or because as you know for yourself, quite often, just through the process of communicating with another human being, having that sounding board there, it can it can really help you to kind of get a grip, especially like when you hear yourself saying certain things. It helps you to process, right? It helps you to process experiences and emotions and all that. And so being able, that's why it's so important about being able to verbalize these things and have somebody listen in a non-judgmental way, because just being able to express it allows you, number one, to, kind of offload that, and number two, it helps you to process your way through it. And so that's why it's so critical to just be able to listen to them. Ask them actually how they feel. Like, tell, if you just say to somebody, tell me more about what you're going through right now. Just tell me what the experience is like for you. I'm really interested in hearing, what that looks like and what you're dealing with right now, because I love you, and I don't want you to have to, navigate through that alone. And so, that's a really valuable way to approach somebody when they're struggling with something like this. And like I said, it will help you as well, because this is what, when you can listen at that level, when you can open yourself up to, somebody else's experience and be able to sit through that without taking it personally, and just not sitting there waiting for your opportunity to talk, not sitting there and just waiting for your next, opportunity to express what your thoughts are. When you can listen at a level that allows other people to express what they're going through, that is what real effective communication looks like. And this isn't something that just applies to mental illness. This applies to all of your relationships, all your connections, your relationships with your children. When you can just try to step back and take your own emotions and reactions out of things and listen to people on a different level, and give them the space to express themselves, it diffuses an awful lot of emotional pain. And so I think that, that's something really important that we all need to work on. And, I'm no exception. It's a learning process for me as well. But these are things that I'm really learning, as I'm going through this process. And the last thing that I wanted to share, that I think is really critically important is, and I've probably touched on it already, but I want to kind of drive this point home before I end this video. And that is that you really have to try to be careful about making assumptions about the fact that you're not helping. So if you're showing up every day or every other day, or even a couple of times a week, and saying, how are you? Do you need anything? What's new? How are things going? If you're just doing that, trust me, you're helping. You're helping. They don't have to reach out. They don't even have to respond. It helps because the message that it sends to people is that, look, I know you care. I know that somebody understands that I'm going through something that's challenging, and I know that they care because they're showing up. And that's all it takes, And you can't assume that because somebody is not responding, because somebody is not reaching out, or taking an offer of help or whatever, it doesn't mean that you're not helping. So please be careful when you think about that. In terms of somebody, if you've been making an effort to reach out and somebody is not responding, if you've been doing that with me and I haven't necessarily, taken advantage of the opportunity, to get help, it doesn't matter. What it makes a difference, and I can speak from personal experience with this, that, it's the people who have responded, the people who have reached out, the people who have, made a comment on one of my videos, letting me know that they're there, that they care, that they're wishing me well. Those are the things that those are your anchors, as we navigate through these kinds of experiences. I really want to drive home the fact of how important that is. If they don't respond, if they don't take your offer of help or whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you're not helping. It just matters that you're showing up. And I guess the other thing that I will say in regards to that is, as much as I would have loved for some of my close family members and relatives to have come to the table to support me throughout this process, um, you don't get to pick and choose who shows up for you. You don't. And I think the one thing I will say is that I am beyond grateful for the people who have shown up for me. Just whether it was a simple message to reach out and say, I hope you're doing okay. I'm sorry you're going through this. Let me know if you need anything. I cannot express how grateful I am, to those people. And for everybody who watches this video, just know that when somebody that you care about, when you find out that they're struggling from mental illness, it's critically important that you reach out and you let them know that you're there, because people need their families to come to their aid. We all need, no man is an island. And what's difficult is, particularly in my own experience, is that, I've spent my whole life trying to, convince people that I am so self-sufficient, that I'm so independent, that I don't need anybody, that I don't need help. I've spent my whole life, trying to be that strong, independent woman. And, I think that that's what I take responsibility, for the fact that I've lived my life that way. And, I think that has contributed to the amount of people who have come forward, because, if everybody in my inner circle has seen me or experienced me in one way throughout my entire life, I can't that, the minute that I start going through a challenge and I say I need help, that all those people are going to come swarming in to support me. They say you teach people how to treat you. And one of the things that I'm now, coming to grips with is the fact that I think I have to take a lot of responsibility for how I've taught people to treat me over the years, which is, unfortunately, I keep people at a distance. I have, pushed a lot of people away. I have, tried to maintain that strong, independent, persona my whole life. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I have been very independent over the years. I am a very strong person. And, I do tend to try to, take stuff on my own. But one of the reasons why I started this whole process is because I recognized and came to accept the fact that I have to change that for my future. Because if you can't ask for help, then what happens when you need help is that there might not be anybody there. And so, let that be a warning to everybody out there as well. If you have a tendency to not ask for help, to not, accept help, if you've been like me, you're throughout your life and you tended to kind of try to manage everything on your own. Listen, no man is an island. And so, start to try to learn to rely on people a little bit more, because there very well could come a day when you're going to need those people. And I think that that's such an important piece. So hopefully you found some of this information helpful. I hope I haven't rambled on too long, but there's just been some stuff building up over the course of time that I really wanted to share, because I felt like it was really important. So that's it for me, I think, for today. I really appreciate you tuning in and listening, and feel free to share these videos and any information that I'm sharing, because I just think it's so important to get it out there. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening to me rant. And like I said, hopefully you got some helpful information out of it. And I will keep in touch. Hope you follow along, and I'll chat with you soon. Thanks, and bye for now.